All right, let's be honest. You put a lot of work and intention into your career, but what about your relationship? If you're like me, it just tends to get your leftovers, but you don't want it to be that way. I mean, you want an exciting and fulfilling relationship, not just a relationship on life support. The problem is when real life hits, it's easy to just become roommates. And this has definitely been the case for me personally. My wife and I, we've been married for a number of years. We have a young kid, we run 2 businesses. And while our relationship is pretty good, we realize there's actually a level of connection missing that we both wanted. But we just didn't know where to start because it feels like nothing's gonna change. And what was happening is we didn't have a good way of communicating our thoughts, our needs, our expectations. And so it was creating this cycle that just made us feel stuck. It wasn't something fundamentally wrong with the relationship, but we did realize there were 3 things at play. In fact, the more I talked with other people, read about it, clients, I realized these 3 things are completely normal. 1, opposites attract. We all know this, but think about it. What it means is that even though we love each other, we're naturally on different pages all the time. We have different ways of connecting. We have different ways of planning the weekends, managing chores, feeling love, showing appreciation, experiencing intimacy, and just the way we communicate thoughts. Me and my wife are basically opposite personalities. She communicates in detailed specifics. I communicate in broad concepts. Neither is right or wrong, but naturally this leads to conflict and misunderstandings all the time. Second, emotions tend to build. For most of us, our tendency is to stuff things down in the moment, not talk about it because we fear the conflict, or we don't want to be a bother. We don't want to make something into a big deal. So we try to wait for a better time, but there's never a good time to say it. And that small little emotion, it snowballs and snowballs into something bigger. And finally, the spark burns out. And we say it like it's a problem, but the spark is meant to go away. It's meant to turn into a flame. And the flame is actually the goal. The spark was just there to start the fire. So the problem isn't that the spark is gone. The problem is that we aren't intentional about feeding the flame. When you put this all together, if you have 2 different people with different personalities who don't talk through the tensions, they don't talk about their needs, and they also don't have that real spark to rely on anymore, then obviously this is not going to go well. But, that doesn't mean it's hopeless. You just need a consistent way to communicate as a team, since it's not likely to happen on its own in the middle of your busy life. If we're not careful, the tensions build and then we grow disconnected. So the good news is all of this can be addressed by something called Relationship Meetup. The premise is super simple. It's basically like a business meeting for your relationship. So wait, at this point, we need a business meeting in our relationship? I know. It's like, to me at first, this sounded totally overly formal and corporate-y and awkward. But I promise you, it's actually the exact opposite. So for us, it helps us grow closer. It helps us have more excitement in our relationship. And this is why I actually love the term relationship meetup, because it's inherently ironic. It's like, it sounds businessy and not romantic, but it calls out the fact that we tend to put way more intention into everything else in our life, work, kids, health, etc., than we do in our most important relationship. For example, I plan and think through projects at work all the time, but at home, I just expect these productive conversations to happen organically. It doesn't make any sense. And that's why I need the relationship meetup. It's so simple. All we do is we meet up once a week for coffee, and we do 2 things. We show appreciation, and we share our wants and our needs. Now, we use a set of questions to guide the conversation and make it fun. So let's start with showing appreciation. You want the conversation to be productive, and so it helps to start with encouragement. This can be as simple as sharing things the other person did that you liked, or recognizing something that's great about your partner. You probably actually do things for each other all the time, but if it's not verbalized, then you start to just feel like business partners getting the job done. Appreciation reminds you that you're on the same team. It's actually kind of funny. Like, the person who's more on your team than anyone else in the world can start to feel like your enemy sometimes, conflicting with your every move. But showing appreciation reminds you that you're in this together. So this is huge for the next part, because this appreciation, it creates the environment of openness where you can really talk, you can understand each other, and you're on the same team. So then you talk about your wants and your needs. Now, if we go back to the idea of opposites attract, we operate with this foundational assumption that the other person always knows what we're thinking and feeling, and they're always going to do the things that we want them to do. Not true. It's kind of like the love languages thing. We tend to give our partner what we would want them to give us, which means we're not actually serving their needs because we're opposites. We're serving our own. So good intentions and all, but it's a miss. Like for me, I feel loved by physical touch. If my wife's having a bad day, I'll hug her and I'm trying to show her love, but it doesn't do much for her. She would feel it if I used words to encourage her. And so vice versa. When I'm feeling down, she says a bunch of words to me, doesn't do anything to help because I actually want a hug. You get the point. Or another one for me is I'm more spontaneous and my wife is more planned. So a perfect weekend for me is like impromptu trip to the mountains to snowboard. But the perfect weekend for her is a bulleted itinerary that we set weeks in advance. So this can start to feel impossible, right? How can you have both a spontaneous and a planned weekend? Well, in our relationship meetup, we talked through those differences. We expressed each of our wants and needs. And for us, we realized the spontaneity for me, it was actually more about excitement. And the planning for her was actually more about safety and not having surprises. So now, instead of conflict, we get each other and we can make a plan together as a team. So when you can express your needs in a healthy way, you realize sometimes there's actually a simple fix. And other times, something that felt like this huge gap is smaller than it seems. So that's the gist of it. You have this relationship meetup on the regular, and it not only starts to resolve issues in the relationship, but you also grow more connected because you're starting to give each other what the other needs, and you're starting to be a team. It's simple. It's actually really simple, but it's not necessarily easy because at first it can feel hard to get started with this rhythm. There's tension, there's disagreement. You don't even want to talk about stuff. And that's why you need some tools that are in our mini course, things like how to schedule the meetup, the questions to ask each other, and how to do a simple hack called mirroring that turns the arguments into understanding and even intimacy. So you can go through this mini course yourself, you can go through it as a couple, or you can even get a coaching session and talk with a coach about it. But here's exactly what you will get. First, you get a super simple guide on how to do the meetup, when to have it, where to have it, how to tee it up and make it actually doable. Because the 1% improvement is better than 0%. Secondly, it gives you 2 beginner questions that you ask each other every time in the meetup. So now you're not having to come up with something. There's this third party telling you what to do. You also get 10 advanced questions for taking it to the next level after it starts to feel more comfortable. And then we have 17 mix it up questions for when you need to keep it fresh. And then lastly, you're going to get this tool I mentioned called mirroring. And what I love about mirroring is in these kind of relationship meetups, like there will be tense conversations, there will be some disagreement, but you don't want it to just turn into an argument. And mirroring is the way to turn it into a productive conversation where you're actually growing closer and becoming more connected by understanding your differences, working through them, and finding a better way forward. So if you're tired of feeling disconnected and just kind of like roommates, and you want to put in the work, you want to make some change, then let's do this. I mean, arguably, your relationship is one of the most important things in your life. But if we're honest, it kind of gets your leftovers. And so I think you're here because you want to shift that dynamic. And let's do it. Let's actually take a step to make it more intentional and grow your relationship. It is possible. It doesn't have to stay stuck. But it takes you taking a step. So this mini course is designed exactly for that, to give you that next step. And I would say this is the time to make the shift. Let's stop giving it the leftovers and start giving it some intention. So take the step today, click the link, get the mini course, and let's start moving together in the right direction.